He thought it was just another quiet morning walk with his dog, until Max ran off into the woods, barking like never before. Moments later, Jack stumbled upon a scene that would shatter his heart and change his life forever. A dying baby, a desperate cry, and a miracle he never saw coming. That it was just another quiet morning for Jack, a man who had long traded the chaos of city life for the stillness of the countryside. His cabin stood at the edge of a dense forest, where silence wasn't empty, but full of whispers from the trees. Most mornings, he and his German shepherd, Max, would walk the same narrow trail, crunching over fallen leaves, the world around them slowly waking up. Jack didn't speak much, but Max didn't need words to understand him. They were a team, two souls bound by quiet loyalty. Jack sipped from a thermos, expecting nothing more than peace and routine. Max trotted ahead with his usual energy, sniffing here and there, his tail swaying like a pendulum. Jack had no idea. This walk, this exact path, was about to change everything. They were about halfway down the familiar trail when Max suddenly froze. His ears perked up, tail stiff, eyes locked onto something deep within the trees. Jack noticed the change immediately. Max never behaved like this. Before he could say a word, the dog bolted off the path, barking with urgency. "Max!" Jack called out, heart skipping. The dog's barks echoed through the forest, sharp and frantic, unlike anything Jack had ever heard. He started running, crashing through brush and branches, his boots sinking into soft earth. His pulse quickened, not from the run, but from the dread clawing at his chest. Max's cries grew louder, more desperate. It wasn't aggression, it was panic. And something else. Something heartbreakingly human. Jack had owned dogs his entire life. But this was a sound of pure fear and sorrow. That's when he heard it. Another sound beneath Max's barking. A soft, helpless whimper, faint and trembling. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't Max. It was the unmistakable cry of a baby, his breath caught in his throat. Max was standing over something. Something small. Something barely moving. Jack rushed forward, heart pounding in disbelief. Nestled in a bed of wet leaves was a newborn, tiny, fragile, and wrapped in what looked like a torn hospital blanket. The baby's skin was ghostly pale, lips tinged blue. Its tiny chest rose and fell in weak, shallow breaths. Max stood vigil beside it, whining softly, nudging the bundle with his nose as if trying to keep it awake. A smear of blood stained the baby's forehead, and there were scratches along its arms, no doubt from crawling or being dragged. Jack dropped to his knees, his hands trembling. How could this be real? Hey, little one. It's okay. You're safe now, he whispered, wrapping the baby carefully in his flannel overshirt. He fumbled for his phone, but there was no signal this deep in the woods. Panic surged, but he forced himself to think clearly. That he looked at Max, who met his eyes with a whimper and a desperate flick of his ears. The dog wasn't just alert, he was pleading. Jack could see it now. Max hadn't found the baby. He had led Jack straight to it, deliberately. And if they hadn't come when they did, Jack didn't want to finish that thought. He stood, cradling the baby close, feeling the faintest warmth still clinging to its body. "We have to move," he said out loud, more to himself than anyone. Max barked once, sharp and decisive, then took the lead again, guiding them back. The way they came, Jack's boots pounded against the trail, his arms wrapped tightly around the baby. The infant barely stirred. Its cries had faded, replaced by soft, wheezy breaths. That terrified him more than any scream. The silence meant time was running out. Max ran ahead, constantly glancing back to make sure Jack was still behind. His usual playful trot was replaced by urgency, every muscle focused, every instinct dialed in. Jack had never seen the dog like this. It was as if Max understood just how fragile the life they carried was. Branches whipped across Jack's face. Thorns clawed at his arms, but he didn't slow down. He couldn't. The trail stretched longer than he remembered, each bend in the path feeling like a cruel delay. "Hold on, little one," he whispered, breath catching in his throat. Just a little longer. Finally, the edge of the forest broke, open to reveal the cabin. Jack burst through the door, nearly kicking it off its hinges. He laid the baby gently on a blanket by the fire, then grabbed his satellite phone, his only reliable connection this far out. His fingers shook as he dialed. "Emergency services," came the voice on the line. "I found a baby," Jack said, breathlessly. "In the woods. She's barely breathing." The dispatcher sprang into action, guiding Jack through what to do next. Max sat beside the baby, head bowed, eyes locked on her tiny chest. They'd made it back. But the fight for her life was far from over. The ambulance arrived within minutes, though to Jack, it felt like a lifetime. Paramedics rushed in, their faces tense as they worked swiftly over the tiny, silent bundle. Jack stood frozen, watching, his hands still stained with dirt and fear. Max stayed near the doorway, alert but calm now, his job, at least for the moment, done. Later that evening, a local sheriff returned to Jack's cabin with news that shook him. The baby was alive, stable, but what they discovered was far more tragic than he imagined. She was abandoned, the sheriff said quietly, left less than a mile from a backroad turnout. No ID, no note, just the blanket and Max. Jack's brows furrowed. What about her mother? She's been found. Young girl, barely 18. Gave birth alone in a car and panicked. We believe she left the baby hoping someone would find her. Jack's heart ached, not with anger, but sorrow. He couldn't imagine the fear that must have driven someone to such desperation. Still, what haunted him more was the thought of how close this baby had come to dying, alone, cold, and unseen. But how did Max even know? He asked aloud, more to himself. The sheriff gave a slow shrug. Some dogs just know. Jack looked down at Max, who now rested his head on Jack's boot, eyes tired but peaceful. Somehow, this dog had sensed life where no one else could. He hadn't just rescued a baby, he had uncovered a second chance. For all of them, days turned into weeks, and the story of the baby found in the woods spread quickly. Local news picked it up, then national outlets. But for Jack, life had quietly shifted in far more personal ways that he visited the hospital often. At first, just to check in. The baby, named Hope by the nurses, was growing stronger every day. She had the smallest fingers Jack had ever seen, and the biggest, most curious eyes. The first time she gripped his finger, something shifted in him. It wasn't just sympathy anymore, it was connection. Child Services asked Jack if he would consider temporary custody. He didn't even hesitate. What had started as an ordinary walk in the woods had turned into something he never expected, the beginning of fatherhood. Max seemed to understand. He stayed near Hope's crib like a guardian, always alert, always gentle. Jack often found him sleeping beside her, tail wagging even in dreams. Jack had lived alone for years, by choice, by routine, but now, every morning, he woke up to the soft coos of a baby and the watchful gaze of the dog who had found her. And strangely, he realized, he had never felt more complete. Sometimes, the most unexpected moments change everything, but a dog's cry in the woods, a newborn on the edge of life, and a man who thought he was destined to be alone. All of it collided in one miraculous, heartbreaking, and beautiful encounter. Jack didn't just save Hope that day. She saved him too. And Max, the loyal companion, reminded everyone that heroes come in all forms, even with 4 legs and a wagging tail. They weren't just a man, a baby, and a dog anymore. They were a family, born not by blood, but by fate.